So before we move into the subdermal masking, I want to do a quick addendum in terms of organization. This is actually not the best way we can keep this organized. So what I want to do is I want to go to my channels, my base color, and copy and paste it. So it's going to copy and paste everything in that channel, all those layers. And so I'm going to keep it separated out here in my channels tab. So I'll have a base color and I'll have a subdermal color. And so in here, I can actually I can actually blow this one away and leave this stuff all on. So that way I don't have to keep flipping back and forth. Keep turning the visibility on and off. And just go back to my channels and then go back to here. To my base color and keep everything organized. The added benefit to this is that because it's all separated into the channels here, I can then have stuff plugged into my shaders that I create, because the shaders will only plug maps based off of folders that are in your channels tab. So keep that in mind. So this is probably a better way to keep things separated, is to just have the layers as you need for each effect, and then have a channel that houses everything in there. So just want to give you a quick addendum to that in terms of organization. I think they'll help out a bit when you guys are painting your maps. So moving on to subdermal masking. So again, this is all very subjective to who you're working with, what kind of skin shader you're using, what kind of effect you're looking to get, and what studio you're working at. But I want to give you a couple examples of some really good subdermal masks that I use typically as a general base in order to get things dialed in production. And it'll get you guys just thinking about this, so if you do encounter this in production, these are some masks that are really going to be some powerful stuff for you to give to look dev artists, or for you to use as a look dev artist if you're going to be look deving your own stuff. First thing I want to do is I want to take my fine disp detail, and I'm actually going to cut this, go to a new channel. I'm going to create a new channel, and I'm going to call this sssMASK. Well, that looks fine. Good. So in here, I'm going to paste that fine disp. So the first mask I want to create, that I like creating, that adds a really subtle effect but very crucial, is I mean, the names are kind of arbitrary, but I'm going to call this scatter area mask. I'm going to call it scatter area fine. I'm going to do a levels adjustment. If I can grab this, there we go. So the goal of this map is to basically say anywhere that it's black or anywhere that it goes darker, there's actually going to be less scatter contribution. Now what happens with typical skin shaders is that because we don't have this fine level of detail that we can adjust in terms of how much scatter is applied to the skin, we end up typically getting skin that looks very hollow, very waxy, and very even. There isn't a lot of variation in the scatter amount, and I think that this map alone sells so much realism. So in the pores, in the deep set pores here, we're going to get a slightly less scatter. And that's going to also help bring out the displacement detail and have that read much better. Because as it stands, without this map, it's going to be a flat color in terms of scatter area amount, and it's going to wash out a lot of this fine detail that we've painted and spent a lot of time on. So providing a map like this is really going to help you in the long run when you want to accentuate some of that fine disc detail, as well as bring your skin away from that waxy hollow look. So the map generally looks something like this. It's not pure white, not pure black. I mean, we're getting some real dark blacks here, which we don't necessarily want. So I want to take that out a bit. So something like this. It's a slight variation off your fine displacement map. And this is another reason why it's so important in this new process that we have the fine displacement separated as an independent layer, an independent map, because it gives us so much ability to tweak stuff and keep it non-destructive. So as it stands, I would give a map something like this to my look dev artist and have them render it. And another nice thing is all these areas where you actually have poor displacement that pops out a bit, we actually do want that to be a little bit more scattery. So you get the sense that these bigger pores, or whatever you want to call them, moles and stuff, they're going to get a little bit more variation. And you can see from white to black there's a ton of variation in here, and this is going to read really nicely when you plug this as a scat area mount map. So this is a map that I like to provide to look dev. Obviously this may go through some more iterations once we plug the first pass of this map in and see what we get, and then you can go back and forth with your look dev artist to decide the best range you want to provide in terms of white to black to get the desired result. So this is the first map I like to apply. Another one is based off of the ambient occlusion. So let's quickly generate one again. So we're going to go to Objects, Ambient Occlusion. It's going to calculate the ambient occlusion for the everything that's in the scene. And then we're going to go to Geometry, Ambient Occlusion. There we go. So this is another map I like to start with. And I like to call this Scatter Area Broad Mask. I'm going to again add a levels. And this does exactly what it says it's going to do. I want to pull out the broad areas of the face. Because we want more scatter in the areas that's going to have less bone to skin. So the areas that is mostly cartilage, that's what we want to focus on. So this is going to give us a good basis, but it's obviously not done because most of the bone is going to be around the brow, so I actually want to paint that out. So to keep this non-destructive, I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to grab the scatter area broad. I'm going to group this, call it scatter area broad mask. And in this paint layer, with a soft black brush, start painting this out. Actually, I'm going to go a little bit more intense just to get the broad strokes out. So again, I'm just focusing on the areas that have more cartilage. and this bone. Because I want that stuff to scatter more. Do broad sweep, like so. And then finesse stuff. So one thing you guys will notice if you guys get into production for texture painting is that it's not this simple color displacement spec, especially for feature films. We rely heavily on secondary maps, such as these masks, that really give us 100% control based off of requests from look dev or stuff that you do that you think will be a nice thing to have as a separate non-destructive layer so they can dial things independently. And this is what sells textures for feature films versus textures for games. Is the employment of all these masks. So definitely keep that in mind if you guys do get into production texture work for films. And this is a massive part to it. And I want to go start painting up these areas of the nose. Because I want more scatter on the nose. And the nasolabial folds of the face. Again, a lot of this is trial and error. You give it a whirl, see how it looks, and then dial it as needed. Again, this map is very forgiving. It's very gestural. So don't need to worry too much about this banding here for now. Faceting. If you want to be more anal about it, you can go in to Maya and smooth the model 2 or 3 times. Bring in a new version of this model in your OBJ tab. So you just go add version, find the new smooth version. When you import it, for those of you who are just using Maya for the first time, you actually, once you import the new version, you actually have to go down to this drop down menu and select the new version. It's not going to do it by default. And then bake an ambient occlusion based off of that super high res geo, and then switch back to your original, and then you'll have a really nice clean AO map on your original topology. Just a nifty little trick. Good. So now I want to move into the ears, because obviously I want those to be much more scattery. Because it's pretty much all cartilage. But again, it's good to have just some subtle variation here, just on these edges. I think they'll be kind of, again, serendipitous for us. When rendering. Because going pure white all over the ear might not be the best result. But having that slight gradation, I think will go a long way. There we go. Actually, I want to take it off the neck here. I'm just going to project right through the chin. So this is where some of the artistry actually comes into play. Just really deciding where you want this stuff to go. Because these maps are the unsung heroes of the texture world. Because nobody sees them, but they really provide that extra sense of detail and effect when you're painting. And when you're giving this stuff to look dev. So I'm just color picking and painting. Just to get some of that seam cleaned up. Oops. I don't want to paint through. There we go. Same thing on this side. Right on that section of the ear. So it's a little bit of a tedious process, but it's going to pay off in the end. And now I want to focus on the eyes. Because I definitely want those to scatter. Quite a bit more. So you guys don't necessarily need to paint these maps per se, but I just wanted to go over this so you guys have an idea of how we do things in production and how we get the look that we get. Because a lot of these times these maps aren't covered in any of the talks and breakdowns. But these are the maps that really bring everything to a new level. And then finally, the lips. Just trying to get something a bit organic. And I'm just doing it in this view to start out with. So we can get some quick coverage. And then move into the ortho view. And then we can clean stuff up here. There we go. So these are two examples of secondary maps that we'll use when painting skin. We'll get the scat area broad and then scat area fine. These will dictate how much scatter, the distance of the scatter. This actually can dictate anything that the look div artist wants. The scatter distance and the area. So a lot of these can be interchangeable, so I could use this for area and distance. So this, for anything that's white, it's going to have more scatter contribution, and anything that's whiter will have a deeper scatter radius. So the list can go on. I mean, I've been in production where I've painted like 6 different types of masks just to control the scatter for the skin. So just food for thought for you guys. So that concludes this week for painting the color maps, part 2. So I want you guys to go over the techniques that I showed you in the beginning of the week, in the beginning of the demos, to get some fine detail pulled out from your ZBrush and your fine displacement maps, and to dial things in, thinking about composition on the face, thinking about areas of rest and interest. Another kind of reason I took some of the poor detail out around the face is so I can focus on the eyes and make sure it's not too busy in terms of color information around the face and around the eyes. Kind of an artistic decision because I want you to focus on the eyes. So always keep that in mind in terms of composition and areas of interest and areas of rest. You don't want it to be busy all over the place all the time, and vice versa. You don't want it to be too flat all over the place and all over the time. So finding that balance is going to be key in creating believable textures.